Hi, welcome to SingularIT training, and welcome to this third video in our JHipster series. In this video, we will talk about generating a project from JHipster, but a project that will include Vue.js, SpringBoot, Keycloak, and also Mongo. So let's look at it. Of course, we want to generate a project. Our goal is to use JHipster. By using JHipster, we'll be able to provide a couple of answers, and it will generate a web project. But that web project will also include SpringBoot, Keycloak, Vue.js, and MongoDB. But it will not restrict to that, because when we go deeper in the code, we see that the Vue.js project is already configured using TypeScript, that the MongoDB has the required Docker Compose to start the MongoDB, and the same thing for the Keycloak. So we got a lot of bonus by using JHipster to generate those entities. But on top of that, we get set up with Docker Compose for our project, but also for the monitoring aspect of the project. We also get ready-made tests, so we have sample JUnit, a sample integration test. So everything is already bundled in a great manner. So let's go with it and see what we get. We will be using JHipster to generate a Vue.js component and Vue.js application, but using a blueprint. Because the blueprint for Vue.js at that point in time is compatible with a specific version of JHipster, we will install that specific version of JHipster. So we'll install it globally. So we'll do sudo npm install -g to get it global, and we'll install the JHipster generator 6.10.3, and we'll let it install. So we'll just cut a little bit of the video. Now that the JHipster generator itself is installed, we'll also need to install a specific version of Vue.js. Here again, we'll make the install general, so npm install -g to get it global, and the JHipster Vue.js generator at version 1.9.2. Now we got both components installed. The next thing to do is to generate the project itself. As with all JHipster project, the first thing to do is to create a folder, because JHipster is not creating the folder for you. JHipster has many features, and it's able to modify the existing project. So basically, unlike the other generator, which just create a new folder for you and never update it, JHipster is able to update it afterward. We need to have the folder already created. So I'll just create one. So let's go for Vue.js, Keycloak, and that one will be in English. Now that we have our folder, we'll just go and move into it. And at that point, we'll be able to generate and answer the small question from JHipster. So the command we will use is JHipster --blueprint to indicate that we want to generate the project in a different manner. And that blueprint that will be used is the generator for Vue.js, that we will have a different UI for the project. Good. So the first thing we want to do is to select which type of application. We will create a monolith application, one that will include both the microservice and the UI. Working with microservice and gateway will be a different topic. We won't use Webflux, we'll stay with the standard REST on that. And by default, it will take the name of the application from the folder we just created it, so we'll keep it. I'll take a Java package with the inverse of my domain name. SingularIT training dot just avoid typos. And we will not use JHipster registry at that point. That will be also another video. But we will use OAuth 2.0 with Keycloak to make the security. And we'll switch to MongoDB. We could use SQL, in which case we will have the choice to develop using HSQL as the development mode and other database as a production. But we'll go with MongoDB. And we'll go with the standard EH cache. The other one will be subject to a video by themselves. Build with Maven. We will use WebSocket. WebSocket and WebFlux are two different things. WebSocket allows to have notification, while the other one allows to have reactive APIs, which send data information one piece at a time. We'll also make the API first development. It allows us to supply API definition in a Swagger file and generate the API and the service according to that. We'll select the Vue.js as the UI. Of course, we're using the generator for Vue.js, so it's the only option we have. And we'll take the default JHipster theme. Let's go for English as a base and add French as the second language. Good, and we'll take protractor as test. Eventually, we'll make a video about the different method of testing that are available in the generation. So we won't use any other JHipster. And by default, it will initialize a Git repository. So instead of creating a folder, you may wish to check out to make a Git clone of an existing repository when you start to make the generation. Otherwise, it will create a local Git repository. So we'll let it generate for a couple seconds. Now, the generation completed successfully, and we got a project and some information about how to run it. But first, let's take a look at the folder that was generated. So we have this Vue.js en. We have those information, the POM that makes the Maven run and the Maven wrapper for both Linux-based system and Windows 2. We even have the Sonar project configuration because Sonar is included and all the configuration for the end-to-end testing are there. We have Webpack. We'll be able to modify the JavaScript and it will reload in the browser directly. We have also some source code. We have main. In the main, we have the web application itself, all the Vue.js application. We have resource. We have jib because the project is able to generate and package a Docker image itself. So you have all you need for production. We have the Java, which contain the microservice, and we have this Docker folder here. The Docker folder contains already the information for the Swagger editor if you want to modify your Swagger using Swagger editor, but you have Sonar to run SonarQube, you have MongoDB, and you have Keycloak. But you also have those monitoring apps like Grafana and Prometheus, which will monitor your application. So you will be able to test the monitoring of your application and it's ready to go to prod because you're making an application that is prod ready. So you will be able to monitor it and detect problem with it once it will be in prod. You also have the Realm config, so the application from Keycloak will generate a setup with some test users directly with the configuration. Everything already made in bundles, so you don't have to worry about that. And all those configuration, you have the Mongo and you have the Keycloak. Those two ones are added because we choose to go with OAuth 2 and that we choose the MongoDB. To get the MongoDB working, and we'll simply go and run the docker compose -f to include a file. The file is source main docker MongoDB, up to say that we want to run it, and -d to be in detach mode. In detach mode mean that we won't follow up the logs from that application. It will just start and we will ignore the log. We started. I already have a MongoDB running, so I'll have to stop them. My Keycloak and my Mongo, because I made the French video first, so sorry for that. Now I'll be able to just start and we'll recreate the new image and connect to it. So MongoDB is started, and I will do the same also for Keycloak. So Keycloak takes some time to run and start. We'll just let it run, and we'll start the Maven wrapper. It will be started before the build is done on the Maven wrapper. Those two components will be started and running. Just don't forget to restart them, because when you reboot your computer, the Docker image won't start automatically. You will have to redo those two commands to bring them up to life, but we should be okay with them. So now just make the Maven wrapper, which will build the application, start it, and get it ready for demo. Now we're ready to access the application. So basically the Maven wrapper made all the build, create the application, and start it. As the application is also providing the Vue.js app, we can simply access the localhost 8080 to see the application. Host 8080. And that is our Vue app, which is loaded in the browser. It's completely JavaScript, and it's ready to use. It's a sample application made for our project. It even includes the version from the POM, which is created. In that case, we have multiple language, English and French, and we also have the account here where we can sign in. In the case of sign in, it works with OpenID Connect. Basically, it forward you to the port from the Keycloak Docker, and it allows you to log in into the JHipster realm, and once logged in, you will be redirected to the application. It's part of the OpenID protocol. So there's two users created by default. One is admin with the password admin, and the other one is user with the password user. So let's test with admin, and as I'm logging with Keycloak, I'm now redirected to 8080, which is my application. And now that I'm logged in, I have those extra menu that show up. I'll create another video to show you how we create entities in JHipster and how the Java code is adapted and modified to support those entities. What we have is the administration. So there's a user tracker, and that one is created for the WebSocket that we activated. There's also a metric. The metric basically connect to our SpringBoot application, and there's an endpoint on the SpringBoot application that gives us all the metrics. So it have the virtual machine metrics, a couple of metrics about the system, the requests, which are all measured. So you can monitor your app. It's ready to go in production because all the apps have some endpoint from Prometheus and Grafana, and we'll have better dashboard in Prometheus and Grafana too. We also have the health. The health is an endpoint in SpringBoot which check for the disk space, the MongoDB, and the application as itself. The other service that the microservice use, like the database, if we would have connected Kafka, we would have a state for Kafka, and so on. We also have the configuration. If you want to debug some configuration from your service, you have all those configuration that are transferred to the SpringBoot microservice. You have the audits. The audits in that case are the audit coming from the Keycloak. Basically, it's retrieving the user ID, and that's UUID for the user from Keycloak, and the state of the success. So that's information coming exactly from Keycloak. You also have the logs. You can change your log level live. So if you have a problem and want to debug, you can turn some of the logs into debug instead of info. So you have better tracing and can put them back in a warn level to have less log. You also have the API. The API allow you to access different resources and make tests and make requests on them. In our case, we only have a couple of get because we did not create entities yet. When we add entities, we'll have more of those endpoints because every entities we'll create in the SpringBoot will be available through REST endpoint, and we'll be able to test them using those API. It's a Swagger Duck API. So now we can test one of those accounts. You get, by example, the API account, which is get. So there's no specific parameter to add. So we can try to execute it. And basically, it will send a curl request, and we will get the response. So basically, this one is really close to an OpenID Connect token. So you have the authorities, you have the role of the user, you have the login, the first name, last name, the email of the user. Everything is there. You can test it, and you also have the response header. So that way we're able to test most of the APIs, and it really helps for development and debugging the application. So it's about that for the application. We'll go further down in the generated source and to describe how we debug, how we test the application. But for that video, it's pretty much the end. I hope you liked the video. If you find it useful, don't forget to like it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you'll receive information about the new video that we'll produce in the future. And happy generation!